Picture this. You get a call from your partner. You all have plans in less than an hour, but they just got a frantic call from their mom asking them to come over right now and figure out why her refrigerator is making a weird buzzing noise. Now your partner's calling you because they don't know what to do about it. They need your advice. In fact, could you maybe tell them what to text their mom or maybe just do it for them? Your partner is incredibly kind but finds it impossible to advocate for themselves, and this is a role that feels all too familiar for you. Somehow you keep finding yourself being part life coach, part therapist, part mom, part dad, part caseworker, part career counselor in most of your friendships and romantic relationships. And why is that? Why is it that some of us find ourselves consistently engaging in relationships where we are fixing the other person? If you've been asking yourself that question, then this video is for you. We're going to explore what might be going on inside of you and your nervous system and what's going on in your relationship dynamics that keeps you feeling like you are a magnet for projects. Before we go any further, let me introduce myself. My name is Lauren Ludlow, and I am a licensed therapist who specializes in somatic, aka mind-body work, with individuals and couples who want to befriend their nervous system so they can reshape patterns and live more aligned and connected lives. Now, before we go any further, I think it's so important for me to really emphasize that in good relationships, we should be helping the people around us, including our friends and romantic partners. We should share resources and knowledge and energy. Giving to and supporting people that we care about is one of the great joys of life. And a fulfilling one is one where we're consistently extending ourselves to others. What we're aiming for is not a life where we are rarely or never or less often giving, but we're looking for relationships and trying to create relationships that are mutually supportive, where we can experience interdependence in our close relationships. Now, interdependence is when people intentionally choose to rely on one another so that everyone involved can better have their needs and even their desires met, because everyone is contributing strengths and resources for the good of everyone else. Now, interdependence is very different than codependence or other less adaptive forms of relationships, because interdependence is mutual, meaning that there is give and take and everyone involved is contributing. Interdependence is also conscious. It is a choice that people are making on purpose. It is intentional. There's clarity on why interdependence is being chosen and engaged with. And interdependence also allows space for each person to maintain their own identity, their own sense of their needs, and their own decision making. So these are all qualities that make interdependence a really lovely, wonderful, nourishing way to exist in relationships. And even really healthy and wonderful interdependent relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships, will go through seasons where support may feel one-sided because one person is dealing with maybe a big life transition, grief and loss, mental health challenges, or something else. Also, interdependent relationships are not even in every area. There are wonderful relationships that involve one person doing most of the planning and the other doing far more implementation, or one person who's very able to be consistent and reliable, or one person might have chronic health issues and instead contributes to creative problem solving, being a grounding presence, and is really good at analytical responsibilities. There are a million ways that relationships can be mutual. And what we're really looking for is that if we zoom out across time and we zoom out across different talents and we zoom out across different areas of the relationship, is there that give and take? Is everyone contributing in their own different ways according to their strengths and their capabilities in ways that are meaningful to those that are receiving? There are also many wonderful relationships in life that are not fully even and fully mutual, like the relationship between a parent and a child, or a caregiver and the person receiving care. We're specifically talking about in friendships and romantic relationships for people who feel like they are fixing all the time, what mutuality and what interdependence can look like. Now that we've clarified all of that, let's focus on the experience of the fixer, maybe look at your relationship history as a whole, your current ones and your past ones, and you're noticing a pattern. Here are some signs that you might be a fixer or in a fixer pattern. Number one, your relationships are not mutual in ways that are meaningful and important to you. There are maybe needs in your relationships that consistently go unmet. And in fact, you find that in many relationships, your needs are barely attended to or considered at all unless you're really fighting for them to be considered. Number two, you see the other person in the relationship as being incapable or helpless without you. In mutual relationships, even if we're instrumental in the other person's life, we really know that they would ultimately find a way to solve their problems, grow, build a support system, and get their needs met through other relationships without us if they needed to. A fixer believes that the other person would almost surely fall apart without them. Number three, you are exhausted. And I'm not just talking about physical exhaustion, but mental, emotional, and spiritual exhaustion. You're not just tracking your to-do list and life plan, but the other person's as well. You're constantly scanning for tasks that are being missed or falling through the cracks, giving reminders, coming up with solutions, and you can almost never fully rest because of all of that. Number four, you resent the other person when they do not take your guidance or advice. Fixers are often working so hard to help the other person that when their help or guidance is ignored, it's frustrating and exhausting. The fixer knows that this is just going to create more work for them later on, since they are responsible for the other person's well-being or growth. Now, you may be hearing all of this stuff and it sounds so clearly bad that you might be questioning, why would anyone keep falling into the fixer role? And why do I keep falling into this fixer role? Being a fixer is not just a comfortable role often, but one that can create a sense of safety in a relationship that your nervous system craves. Here are some ways that being a fixer and that fixer role can actually help you to feel safer in relationships. Number one, you might experience safety from rejection and anxious attachment. When another person needs you, it feels much less likely that they would ever leave you. We can understand this through the lens of attachment theory, which, though it has its flaws, can be a helpful way of understanding these sorts of relationship patterns. Attachment theory tells us that throughout our lives, but especially early on, we learn how we need to operate and show up in relationships to receive the safety and connection that we need while minimizing pain and harm. If we experience environments where care is inconsistent, love is conditional, and we are only as loved as we are useful, this can set us up for anxious attachment patterns. And fixers can get a sense of security for being so useful and needed that the other person cannot abandon them, because these are maybe the attachment patterns that got laid down for them. Number two, it's possible that being a fixer is just a familiar pattern. Your nervous system can get an automatic sense of safety from things that feel familiar, even if those things actually are not objectively safer. If we've experienced relationships with a lot of yelling, screaming, and throwing things, then we can feel a sense of comfort in relationships that look, feel, and sound like that, and maybe even feel distressed by quiet and calm communication because we don't know what comes next or how to respond. And the same applies to fixers. You know exactly how to operate in this role and what to expect because you've had repeated exposure to it. Number three, the safety of control. Being in the fixer role comes with a powerful illusion of control. When someone relies on you for guidance and advice, you get to determine the course of the relationship, the course of their lives, and your collective direction, or so it seems. This isn't reality, but fully an illusion. Any fixer over time will find that no matter how passive the other person is, there's going to be many times when they don't take your advice, they don't do what you ask them to do, and you're providing reminder, but they're not sticking with important responsibilities. Even worse, there are moments where you might be the one falling apart. You're the one in need of support, but you cannot control or ensure it's going to be there because you are responsible for taking the initiative in every area. Now, this can all get compounded by the rush of well-being that floods your body when the fixing work. When the other person finally gets that new job, breaks that old pattern, learns that new skill, or does the things you need them to do, it feels amazing. But the highs are high, the lows are low, and the in-between is exhausting. So how do we start to break the pattern? How does the fixer stop fixing? Like most change, this will start with a decision. You have to be clear on whether or not you want to step out of this role and what you want your friendships, your romantic relationships to really look like. I mean, actually sit and imagine it. What could your romantic relationships look like? What could your friendships look like if there was true interdependence, if there was true mutuality? Once you've decided that you want to step out of the fixer role, you may want to assess your relationships with an open mind regarding which ones could change. Some of your relationships have this fixer-fixie dynamic because you're holding it in place alongside the other person. But it may be that neither of you truly likes it or wants to maintain this dynamic. Relationships can change, but only if both people want that change and find the relationship to be valuable enough to make that change, and both people are willing to work at it. Some friendships or romantic relationships just are not strong enough or close enough to be worth it for both people to shift, and that is okay. And some are so drastically imbalanced or have been stuck for so long that change is unlikely. But look at your relationships that have this dynamic and really ask yourself a few questions. What does this relationship mean to you? What does this relationship bring into your life that matters to you? Why do you value this relationship? Do you believe you could shift the way that you show up in the relationship, and are you willing to do so? And do you believe the other person can and is willing to shift the way they show up in the relationship? Depending on the answers to these questions, you may want to have a conversation with people where you deeply value the relationship and you believe change is possible. And in this conversation, you can take responsibility for what you've been doing to create this dynamic or maintain it in the relationship, and explore if the other person wants to work towards something different with you and is willing to own their part in it as well. Another step can be noticing when the helping starts to harm. When you're engaging in helpful and supportive behavior, start to observe yourself like a scientist. Notice how you feel as you're engaging in the supportive behavior. What does it feel like in the mind and body? When does it feel good? When does it not feel good? Or when does it stop feeling good? What are you believing as you engage in supportive behaviors? Consider writing these things down. Experiment with what it's like to not do the fixing. It can be way too much for the nervous system to just cold turkey stop anything that could even almost be fixing. The anxiety can be overwhelming, so start with experiments. As you notice the fixing behaviors that feel the most draining or the most upsetting or the most resentment inspiring, start with seeing what it's like to not do those things. Don't fix in those ways, and notice what happens to you, the other person, and the relationship. Knowing that if you want to go back to fixing, you always can. Lastly, focus on nurturing connection. Build up your sense of safety in your relationships in new ways. Connect with your romantic partner or friends through enjoyable activities, deep conversation, or just peaceful or enjoyable time together. Take walks, run errands while chatting, go out for coffee. The activity matters less than genuinely learning to enjoy one another's presence without an agenda and without the focus being on doing and growing and solving. Making significant changes to long-standing relationship patterns is challenging, and it takes time and patience and repetition. Being a fixer is not your true identity. It is a way of trying to create safety and stability in your relationships, and you're capable of finding new ways of creating that safety. See who in your life is willing to take that journey with you, and if you need to create some new relationships as well, that is okay. If you need support in this journey, check out the links in the description for more resources, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for checking out this video.